Us now with his reaction is Democratic Senator Alex Padilla from California, who was up for those all-nighters in the Senate and is joining us now. Nevertheless, thanks for being with us, Senator. You voted for this bill despite the modifications that we just described. But you do wonder, from the perspective of progressives like yourself, do you think that Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden are bending over backwards too much to please moderates like Joe Manchin?
So, well, good morning, Abby. Thanks for having me on the show. And look, if it means pulling off more all-nighters in the weeks and months ahead to get more resources and help for families and communities that are hurting, I would be happy to do it again over and over. As far as the final version of this bill, look, a couple of things that I wish we wouldn't have flexed on. But the bottom line is this. This is a huge deal. As you just mentioned, tremendous amount of resources that are now closer to being on the way to families through direct assistance, to families through the expansion of child tax credits, to small businesses, and not just school districts, but state and local governments whose budgets have been devastated by the economy because of COVID. And of course, huge infusions to expand vaccine programs, testing and tracing programs. This is the type of comprehensive, bold action that we've been needing since the beginning of the pandemic, and we're finally moving on it now.
In just the past few weeks, House Democrats have passed a slew of bills, big Democratic priorities like the minimum wage hike, like voting rights, police reform, and LGBTQ protections. But as we look toward the Senate, none of that will go anywhere as long as you need 60 votes in the Senate. Now, this COVID relief bill was passed through a reconciliation process, which only needs 50 votes. But last week, Senator Joe Manchin said again he would, quote, never eliminate the filibuster. What options do you have as a Democrat if you want to move forward on some of those other priorities?
Look, at the end of the day, action on those key items, whether it's raising the minimum wage, policing reform, other types of criminal justice reform, action on climate, healthcare, and more, there's multiple ways to get there, and we'll exercise all options. Look, I agree, and you've heard me say this before, I'm in favor of abolishing the filibuster. There's a couple of Democratic senators who have said they're not there yet. If we continue to see obstruction from our Republican colleagues, as we saw through this COVID relief package, then I think the patient's going to wear thin, even on moderate Democrats. But we'll see. In the meantime, we'll exercise as many options as we can, whether it's through straight legislation, budget reconciliation, or otherwise, to continue to make progress.
Do you think voting rights should be the issue? As a lot of progressives have put forward that voting rights should be the issue that they eliminate the filibuster for?
Look, there's a lot of strong contenders, whether it's climate or healthcare. For me, voting rights, as you know, is very personal. I spent my prior 6 years working as California's Secretary of State. I think advancing the model, not just for maintaining the security and integrity of our elections, but maximizing access to the ballot from the registration side to the voting side. And it's a model that I think would serve the country great. A lot of the elements that were implemented during the November 2020 elections because of COVID, let's hope they're permanent shifts in that direction, not one-time shifts just because of the health pandemic. So a strong contender, I think, for reforms on the Senate side. It's not about Democrats. It's not about Republicans. It's about our democracy. Let me remind us all, on January 6th, we saw a deadly insurrection at the Capitol. Our democracy, confidence in our democracy is under attack and requires bold action to defend it.
Well, let's talk about another thing that you have really prioritized, which is the issue of immigration. You have a bill that would grant citizenship to 5 million essential workers. I think given the pandemic, we all understand how important essential workers have become to our society. But that is less than the 11 million who would get a path to citizenship under the President Biden's comprehensive plan. I wonder, is there a risk that passing something like this could make a comprehensive reform more difficult in the long run from a strategic point of view?
Yeah, look, I'm glad you asked that question. So first, the point on my first bill as a U.S. Senator. I think it's a great idea, of course, but it touches on two key issues. Number one, COVID response. We're talking about essential workers here, people who are recognized by the federal government as being essential, protecting our communities, keeping the economy going. But second, immigration reform, which is long overdue in this country. You know, for all the Facebook posts, all the tweets, all the gestures of gratitude that you've seen this last year, praising essential workers for their service, for their courage. My God, they have earned not just protections in the workplace, but a pathway to citizenship. So that's the main point of this proposal. But I also think it serves a purpose to continue to build support and momentum for comprehensive reform. The big Biden package, what the House and the Senate should be acting on sooner rather than later. It's not about Dreamers versus TPS holders versus essential workers or anybody else. It's about a comprehensive reform that brings some sanity and humanity to our immigration system.
Can I ask you about a brewing issue at the border? We're seeing what seems to be an emerging crisis of unaccompanied minors crossing the border, and CNN is reporting that there just isn't room for all of these children. Quote, "We're apprehending more kids than we can release." That's according to a senior Homeland Security official. DHS has also acknowledged that the number could reach record levels this year. This is a humanitarian issue, especially for the children who are coming across this dangerous passage. Do you think that the Biden administration is doing enough to discourage families from sending their kids on this journey, especially at a time when resources are thin and on the verge of being overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think the question better asked is, are we doing what we can? As long as the numbers keep coming, there's always room to do more, but I think we're doing what we can for now. Let's also recognize that the numbers are up, but nowhere near the huge numbers that we saw maybe under the Obama administration once upon a time. And we're also being dealt a horrible hand from the Trump administration. You remember the children being locked up in cages and families being separated at the border. We will not repeat those actions. Add to that COVID-19 protocols that should be in place to protect the health, not just of those seeking asylum or refugees, but the employees of these facilities, et cetera. So it's looking a lot worse. I don't want to diminish the challenge of it, but resources, again, are on the way. New leadership within the Department of Homeland Security and at USCIS to just handle the situation much more humanely and responsibly.
Just real quick before we go, the Biden administration is still using this Trump-era pandemic health order, Title 42, to turn back most immigrants. Do you think that they should stop using that order now?
Yeah, look, I think that's being revisited. But when you do it properly through the administrative process, it takes a minute. Yet another reason why we need to also continue to confirm the Biden appointees as quickly as possible. When you delay somebody like the Secretary of Health and Human Services, that does not help. These are qualified individuals that President Biden has put forth. A lot of my Republican colleagues, yet again, trying to drag their feet, trying to delay, trying to obstruct when their service and their leadership in the administration is urgently needed.
Oh, Senator Padilla from California, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Abby. Hope to be back soon.